Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Garrett Smith of nutritionrestored.com, licensed naturopathic physician in the state of Arizona. And today we're going to go over COVID-19, also called the novel coronavirus lately. We're going to go over things that make it worse for people and things that make you more susceptible to getting it and making it worse. Here we go. First, we're going to get the coronaviruses straight because there's more than one. Did you know that? First, we're going to go over SARS. SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. SARS is a coronavirus. SARS was around back in 2003. That was one of the big, gonna be a virus pandemic issues back then. Okay, this is not our focus. We're going to review it again later because there's several studies that talk about it that are very pertinent, but that's the first one. Now we're going to go over all the terms for the new or novel coronavirus today. We have COVID-19, which stands for Coronavirus Disease 2019. This is the term I'm going to use because this is the term that the World Health Organization settled on. So this will be the term that is in the research after this. Then, like I said before, we have the novel coronavirus. We have, which it's not, I mean, it's new, but SARS already came around. Then we have SARS-CoV-2, which stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. Then we have 2019 novel coronavirus, which is abbreviated 2019-NCOV. We have the Wuhan coronavirus, and we have the Wuhan pneumonia. The biggest problem with all these names that they didn't decide on them quickly is that the early research is going to be hard to find because they may have to search for all these terms to go find the paper that they really want. So that's one of the issues that I have with this. You know, just pick a name and stick with it, but they've done it now. So first, what are we going to be covering today? We're going to be covering research showing that receiving the influenza vaccine, aka the flu shot, increases one's susceptibility to getting a coronavirus infection. We're going to go over research showing how the first exposure to certain viruses through either infection or vaccine doesn't make you immune and may actually make the second infection or exposure or challenge even worse. We're going to go over research showing that certain viruses and vaccines are cross-reactive with each other, which means they have similar enough proteins to cause reactions in the body as the same thing, which plays into the first two items that I just mentioned in very specific ways. Now, the big one. We're going to go over how getting the flu shot makes you more susceptible to getting the coronavirus. And it's in the research. Here's the paper. Influenza vaccination and respiratory virus interference among Department of Defense personnel during the 2017-2018 influenza season. I believe these were Navy guys. Quote, receiving influenza vaccination may increase the risk of other respiratory viruses, a phenomenon known as virus interference. Vaccine-derived virus interference was significantly associated with coronavirus and human metapneumovirus, end quote. So getting the flu shot in a Department of Defense, I believe it was Navy guys' study, was shown to make you more susceptible, make them more susceptible to coronavirus infection later. Makes you want to run out and get your flu shot, doesn't it? Next, what is sensitization? This is an important term. It is the state in which an enhanced immune response is provoked by a second exposure to an antigen. Enhanced immune response means a more, when you're thinking of cytokine storm, think of that as an extremely enhanced immune response. Cytokine storm being like an overreaction of the immune system, causing trouble. So an enhanced immune response is bad, okay? Most people are familiar with this kind of sensitization process from the allergy world, where the first exposure to an allergen sensitizes the body. The person might have not even a reaction at all. They might have a mild reaction. They might have a moderate reaction. Then if they're exposed to it again, the second reaction is the violently strong one, where it's the anaphylactic shock and they need an EpiPen and they got to go to the hospital and it's life-threatening, okay? That's the way think of that as sensitization, but you can have sensitization to viruses and vaccines also. This is really important for these next couple slides. We're going to go into sensitization. So First, we're going to go over the sensitization pattern with dengue fever infection and the vaccines that are for it. So the article was entitled Dengue Vaccine Controversy in the Philippines, and it was an interview with a scientist who was very familiar with this. Quote, here's the problem. For children who have already been exposed to dengue, the vaccine is safe and works pretty well. But there is an unusual thing about the dengue virus. The second infection can be a lot worse than the first. So for kids who have never had the disease, the vaccine acts as the first exposure. So if they are exposed to dengue later on, they are at higher chance of having the severe reaction. So the key takeaways from that are the second infection or exposure causes a worse problem than the first, and that the vaccine can act as the first exposure. Does that happen with any other viruses or vaccines? I wouldn't ask that question if I hadn't already looked it up, right? Now we're going to go into the sensitization pattern with RSV infections and vaccines. So, a little background first. From the paper, Viral and Host Factors in Human Respiratory Syncytial Virus Pathogenesis. Quote, it seems reasonable to suspect that neonatal infection of certain individuals may, depending upon timing and genetic background, mediate long-term pathogenic changes to the developing lung and host response. It is possible that the immunological imprint of this first infection is related to the lifelong susceptibility to RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, reinfection. So what they're saying is neonatal baby infections as a baby, depending upon timing and genetic background, can cause long-term disease type changes to the lung and the immune system. Okay, that's the translation of all those big terms. Now, let's go into the next paper. RSV vaccine enhanced disease. Let me read that. Let me start that one again. Respiratory syncytial virus vaccine enhanced disease is orchestrated by the combined actions of distinct CD4 T cell subsets. Quote, children previously immunized with a formalin inactivated RSV vaccine exhibited enhanced respiratory disease following natural RSV infection. End quote. Natural RSV infection, they later got the vaccine and they had enhanced respiratory disease. They were much worse after the vaccine. Now, moving on. Gosh, is there anything like this for coronavirus? For vaccines for coronavirus? This first one, we only need the title, I think. The paper is called A Double Inactivated Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus Vaccine Provides Incomplete Protection in Mice and Induces Increased Eosinophilic Pro-Inflammatory Pulmonary Response Upon Challenge. Let me translate that for you. Incomplete protection. They could still get sick from what they were vaccinated for. Increased eosinophilic pro-inflammatory pulmonary response. Their lungs were crazy inflamed. And eosinophils tend to show up in allergic reactions or parasite infections. It's a bad response in the lungs. It's a huge immune response. You don't want that. Next, the paper is called Immunization with SARS Coronavirus Vaccines Leads to Pulmonary Immunopathology on Challenge with the SARS virus. Quote, these vaccines can induce potent neutralizing and protective responses in immunized animals, but may induce antibodies that enhance infection by early human SARS coronavirus and animal SARS coronavirus-like viruses. Enhanced infection, worse infection by coronavirus-like viruses. So they don't even have to be exact. You getting worried yet? Moving on, more on the SARS coronavirus vaccine enhanced disease. Most of these studies were back in like 2004, 2005, okay? The paper, Vaccine Efficacy in Senescent Mice Challenged with Recombinant SARS Coronavirus Bearing Epidemic and Zoonotic Spike Variants. The quote, this is the important part. VRPN vaccines not only failed to protect from homologous or heterologous challenge, but resulted in enhanced immunopathology, that's bad, with eosinophilic infiltrates within the lungs of SARS coronavirus challenged mice. Enhanced immunopathology means they are worse. Sorry, I forgot to end the quote, but now this last one, I'll just read the paper title. Prior immunization with severe acute respiratory syndrome associated coronavirus nucleocapsid protein causes severe pneumonia in mice infected with SARS coronavirus. Now, after all those papers I just read, do you wonder why the SARS coronavirus vaccine never came out? What if it did come out in some places and they actually injected people with it? What would their reaction to the novel coronavirus be, do you think, based on those papers? That's a whole nother topic. So now we're going to go into what is cross-reactivity. We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but now we're going to go into it deep. So cross-reactivity, quote, in a general sense is the reactivity of an observed agent which initiates reactions outside the main reaction expected. In immunology, the cross-reactivity has a more narrow meaning of the reaction between an antibody and an antigen that differs from the immunogen, end quote. To put it more simply, cross-reactivity occurs when the proteins in one substance are similar to the proteins found in another substance, with the body reacting to both of them, like they're the same thing. That last paper I read where they said it was the SARS coronavirus nucleocapsid protein. They had already been immunized with that protein, and then it caused severe pneumonia. That's what we're talking about. So why is this cross-reactivity important? Well, what if viruses and vaccines were cross-reactive with each other? We already showed that they were, but they are. So now let's go into cross-reactivity in animals and other pandemic viruses. The Swine paper, Swine Influenza A vaccines, pandemic H1N1 2009 virus, and cross-reactivity. Quote, since its first emergence in the human population in spring 2009, infections with pandemic H1N1 2009 virus have been reported in pigs, turkeys, and some carnivore species. Proof of cross-reactivity was also reflected in the infection trial. Pigs infected with avian-like H1N1 responded to avian-like H1N1 as well as to pandemic H1N1 2009 virus, end quote. So we got multiple cross-reactivities potentially across multiple species. If that doesn't concern you, then the next one probably will. So first, I'm going to start out with the title of this one. Antigenic cross-reactivity between severe acute respiratory syndrome associated coronavirus and human coronaviruses 229E and OC43. They already just told you. Cross-reactivity between the SARS virus and other coronaviruses. People say, oh, well, the coronavirus is mutated. It's still cross-reactive, probably. So now, quote, by use of Western blot analysis, indirect immunofluorescence assay, and enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, ELISA, some of you may be familiar with that, antigenic cross-reactivity between severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, associated coronavirus, and two human coronaviruses, 229E and OC43, was demonstrated in immunized animals and human serum. Overall, serum samples from convalescent patients who had SARS had a one-way cross-reactivity with the two known human coronaviruses, end quote. So, next question, can there be cross-reactivity and sensitization together? That would be bad, right? What if you've ever had a coronavirus cold or flu in your life? Would that sensitize you later? I don't know. Let me just read the title of this one to you. Enhanced pneumonia and disease in pigs vaccinated with an inactivated human-like H1N2 vaccine and challenged with pandemic 2009 H1N1 influenza virus. Different viruses, enhanced pneumonia and disease. So apparently we do have cross-reactivity and sensitization. The question is, do any of the other coronaviruses have cross-reactivity with COVID-19? And would those other coronaviruses that have already been around act as a first exposure? So we're getting near the end. This sets up some very, very important questions that scientists should be asking. SARS coronavirus, the first one, happened in China in 2003. According to the World Health Organization data, there were 6,873 recovered cases in China. I think there was about 8,000 in the world. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean they caught everybody who had it. It just means those were the people that they suspected had it. That was the cases. Mostly in China. Weird. Where is the COVID-19 deaths mostly from? 90% or above still from China. Interesting, right? Would all those people, the ones who were reported, the ones who were suspected, or who didn't go to the doctor, who had their first exposure back in 2003, have a stronger, potentially deadly response to COVID-19 today? They say it's hitting older people more. That was 17 years ago, folks. Next, are the deadly reinfections said to be happening from COVID-19? Are they happening because of the medications that they used? Which I'm going to go over in another video about the connections between vitamin A and coronavirus. Are they from a second exposure? Could this happen this fast? Could people get sick with coronavirus, COVID-19, and then a couple weeks later have their second exposure and it's much worse? Or is it some combination of both? Here's the interesting question. Mandatory vaccinations in China started October of 2019, and COVID-19 seemed to show up December of 2019. Now, I'm not one to believe in coincidences much. Where did SARS, the first one, coronavirus, happen? In China. Who would think that they need a coronavirus vaccine the most then? Do you think in China they're really telling people which vaccine they're getting? Do you trust communist governments? If there was a SARS coronavirus vaccine given out, that would be a first exposure, and it could set people up for a mega second infection. Now we get into the big thing that's going on right now. Could the vaccines currently in development for COVID-19? Remember, they gave up supposedly on the SARS coronavirus back in 2003, 2004, 2005. They gave up on it. It wasn't working. It was making things worse. If people get the new coronavirus vaccine, will that be a cross-reactive, sensitizing vaccine that will set them up for more severe reactions later? Do not forget that the SARS coronavirus from 2003 vaccine was abandoned, supposedly. So based on what I know, I will definitely be skipping the COVID-19 vaccine when it comes out. You're obviously welcome to make your own decision, but I won't be touching it, and neither will my family. So that's about it. You want to hear or read more from me? My website is nutritionrestored.com. You want to see the public forum for more highly referenced articles like kind of like this video. My free to join network, which is also the home of my vitamin A, aldehydes, and glyphosate detox program, is at nutrition-restored.mn.co. All these websites are in the slide presentation that'll be linked below. My YouTube channel, hopefully you're here on it, it's youtube.com/nutritionrestored. My Facebook is facebook.com/doctorasteacher. And my BitChute, which is where I back up all these videos just in case they're made to disappear, is bitchute.com/channel/nutritionrestored. And again, all these links are in there. If you want to see any of these references, they will all be in the slides presentation that will be linked in the description below. And if you want to chat with me more about these issues, I'll be having some more videos come out on coronavirus, things that I found that are going to be helpful. And here's what's the wrap up. If you've had the flu vaccine, you need to be more careful about this coronavirus. We see evidence of sensitivity and cross-reactivity in viruses and later infections, and it's been shown with the SARS coronavirus vaccine. So that should make even the most prominent vaccine proponents really take a pause and look at whether they think they want to do that or not. And if you're all for it, if you're all for the SARS-CoV-2 or the COVID-19 vaccine, volunteer for the trials. Go for it. Save the rest of us. Okay? So anyway, again, I'm Dr. Garrett Smith of nutritionrestored.com, the nutrition detective. I hope you enjoyed this presentation day. I will see you all around.